What's up, everybody? Welcome to Aaron Bruski's very premium podcast. I am doing something a little different here tonight. I'm just going to hit the button, press play. I have no time for show prep, no time for nothing. We just put the kiddo down and I just want to crank some content out. As you guys know, I've been struggling, I guess is the right word, for really about 3 years with repetitive stress injury, something my doctor will not let me say out loud, but it's the easiest way to explain to you guys that all those 10,000 word columns ended up breaking my body. And so I've been really for the last year and a half unable to type. I'm probably working at about 10 to 20% capacity, and so I've had to reorganize my entire life around this stuff. The long and the short of it is I don't get to do content that often. And usually I'm doing something between CEO and janitor work around here. And I'm literally railing on the guys to get me out of this role, because I really do miss the content, and I miss the fantasy just takes world. I think there's something to be said about being in the pit every day. You know, guys like Dan Vesper, Steve Vidovich, Mike Passador, Eric Ong, and sort of on down the list of our guys that are either doing blurbs or daily content. I mean, they're just in the battle to get it right. I know that makes it sound all dramatic, but there's a lot to be learned inside of the battle about all these different players. You definitely get more micro insights. I still go through my normal process competitively, so nothing's changed on that front. And in fact, it's really frustrating because that takes a significant amount of time, and I don't get to put that kind of out for you guys on a platter. So I put the kiddo down, and I have a little bit of time, and what I want to do is spin through all 30 teams. I know, here, just get right back on it and let's go big. But I think we can do this pretty quick, and I want to just go. So that's the intro to everything we're going to be doing here, and we're just going to go old school style through the different teams, all 30 of them, and let's get this going here. So this is the first time I've done significant content since the B150. I'll probably make references to the B150. We've got about, 30% of the season done? 32%. So we're at about the third mark. And man, I got to say, just looking at the top name on this list, I got teams that are doing extraordinarily well with a bench that looks something like Cam Johnson, Desmond Bain, Brandon Ingram, and Dejounte Murray. You know, a four-person bench that looks like that. And then I've got some teams that have been just completely annihilated, like to the point of I'm almost looking at them and thinking, why put energy into that team, knowing that there's probably 1% shot that I can compete. That's a bummer, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. I think the injuries are, I don't know if they're up this year, but they are definitely out there this year. It feels there's like a lot of shorter term 2 to 3, 4 week injuries, and maybe not the big poppy season ending type stuff. But at any rate, in Atlanta, the top name on this list is Dejounte Murray. He and Trae Young, I would say, Murray had the game where he played just a few minutes, and that's driving him down to 25 right now. I like his position, and especially knowing that he profiles as a younger player, pretty likely to stay on the floor, even though he has had some injury concerns. This one was obviously a freak one. But looking great, and it really does look like Atlanta actually might view him internally as the number one. I'm just kind of getting ahead of that, but we'll see how that plays out. Trae Young, the shooting percentage. Last year he shot so efficiently. This year not so much. That rebound is going to take place. It's actually kind of underway right now. And now that the spotlight's on him, he's probably going to have to get down to the grindstone and play his best ball, and that's what he's been known for. So Trae Young, maybe a little bit of market fatigue out there for him. So see if you can get in there on that, because I think the arrow is definitely pointing up. Clint Capella, 42, that's good, sell high. John Collins, 54, kind of what you would expect. Kongwu is one of the, it feels like the glut of big men that either were doing well or not doing well, or are not doing well and unlikely to live up to my expectations as far as the B150 goes. But we'll see. I think was a guy named Nikola Jokic who we had deep into the 2016 season, and about 30 games in, everybody wanted to jump ship, and we said no, buy low. And that was that. Now these guys are a different story. I mean, the Jokic stat set always was what it was. So that's what we were keying on. That might lend itself to more grace for somebody like Isaiah Jackson. But Okongwu, what I've noticed with Okongwu is that he didn't turn the corner on statistical output. He showed two versions of himself, one being a good per minute stat guy, and then this one, and he showed this as well in the past, just being an empty stat guy. So not only not really taking the reins from Clint Capella, but also not producing in the minutes that he's got. 165 in 20.5 minutes per game. Also, this is 9-cat that I'm expressing these ranks in. I know that's a big switch. I was doing 8-cat before, but let's just go 9-cat. I could probably do the adjustments on the fly, and as far as the formats go, or the way that we're going to talk about this stuff, I'll, when in doubt, tell you what I think a guy's going to produce at on a per-game basis the rest of the way, and then you can know what your league is. If your league only plays top 75 guys like the Dan Bespris leagues out there, you know, that's where you're going to look at a lot of streamers. You're not going to have as much patience for guys like an Okongwu. And then if you're in a league with 2 starting centers and you guys are playing 200 players deep, and somebody at 165 actually could have value for you in lineups at the end of your lineup, and then you've got some upside beyond that, you're probably going to hold on to an Onyeka Okongwu. Bogdan Bogdanovic is back, as Dan mentioned in his most excellent Twitter feed. This is a good time to pick him up and just deal with the issues later. They definitely want him to play. He's definitely, frankly, necessary at this point with the way that they have fallen apart health-wise. But also just a big, a ball mover, even though he's not a huge assist guy. But just another guy who can put the ball on the ground, get behind the three-point line, be the recipient of some of these drive and dish passes. Though I do worry that this offense is going to get completely drive and dish, and that's been the knock on it so far. Anyway, that's it in Atlanta, and you can take your flyer on whichever AJ Griffin or Jalen Johnson you want to while they are thin, but it's not for me. All right, out of Atlanta, Brooklyn, Kevin Durant doing great. I think no surprise there. Kyrie Irving right where we thought he would be. Nick Claxton, even though he's only shooting 42.3% from the free throw line, he is at a top 60 number in 9-cat, and that's just because of some of the more gaudy numbers, about 12 points, 9 rebounds, 2.2 blocks, 72% from the field. He's definitely getting it done, and this is what we had hoped to see the previous season, but did not. I'm going to quickly check, make sure I'm recording here. That'd be the kind of night that I would have, would be recording and actually not recording. At any rate, who else here? We got Ben Simmons at 98, Royce O'Neal at 99. That's actually where we thought they would be, so no real analysis. I think you guys know where I stand on Ben Simmons. And I will say, actually, I will add this. I do think that I'm sensing a little bit more responsibility in his quotes for his own actions, and that's good. I mean, that was a knock on him. Can he stay healthy? Can he actually produce? Those, I think, I don't know if those two issues go hand in hand, or if they don't relate to one another. It's Ben Simmons. He's got a weird stat set, a good amount of talents, and I don't know that the statistical production wiggles, regardless of what's going on with him. All right. That was a weird little spin on Ben Simmons. Seth Curry off and on. I really think if you take the plunge here, you're just hoping that he gets good for about 8 straight games, and then I think you're probably looking at either injured days off or some dips. Nobody here. TJ Warren, even, I mean, maybe a little sign of life for TJ Warren. I think if you were in a 200-player league, taking a flyer on TJ Warren could make some sense, but beyond that, you got to keep your expectations in check for all the obvious reasons. Nothing else going on in Brooklyn. Let's move on to Boston, where, I mean, yeah, I would say this is exactly what we thought they would do. Even like Derek White at 90 and 9-cat, 25.7 minutes per game. By the way, he's going to get those minutes the rest of the year. So, I mean, questions about Derek White. Again, if you're in a top 75 only league, maybe that's a thing. But Derek White, these guys around him, I mean, they play through a lot of injuries, and they really pride themselves on that. But they are banged up, injury-prone guys. The idea that Derek White is there to get these 25.7 minutes the rest of the way seems pretty likely. Grant Williams at 110. I think we mentioned him in the preseason as a sleeper. Malcolm Brogdon also at 120 in a 9-cat league where he's giving the ball away 2 times per game. So about 90 and 8 cat, 108 cat. And again, that's where we thought he would be. So also 22 games so far, so he hasn't been too banged up. That's a pretty decent position if you found your way into Malcolm Brogdon, as well as if you picked him up on the waiver wire, which we actually did see that in some deeper leagues. Moving out of Boston, who are pretty straightforward. Charlotte, this team, I mean, man, talk about unlucky for LaMelo Ball general managers. You had to at least respect the idea that a young player like him could get back on the court before or at his timeline, and that timeline just continued to drag, and then stepping on a fan's foot and having it actually hold him out significantly. That's rough. I mean, hopefully he's back soon, but there's no major updates that he's back soon. I don't think I even saw a video of this injury. I did hunt it out a little bit. I'm not completely invested in LaMelo Ball. I think I had him way too high in the rankings, especially looking back now. But man, bad luck, and especially if you drafted early. So in his wake, you've seen basically Kelly Oubre get his. He's at 70 and 9 cat, and obviously a high water mark for him. But in terms of anybody else being a beneficiary, Terry Rozier can't really shoot this year so far, 40%. We saw this play out last year. We were big on Terry Rozier last year and not so much this year. He is going to bounce back, but will it be enough to go where he was drafted? I don't know. You got to think that LaMelo Ball returning would help him as well. This team is stuck in some kind of Mason Plumlee driven offense, and in Mason Plumlee's defense, he's catching a lot of grief locally, though Nick Richards isn't playing as well the last 2 weeks, and that was the big thing, is everybody wanted him to get off the court and get Nick Richards on. Plumlee, for his part, played better than that vibe, but the continuity within the offense just doesn't seem to be there. You got a couple gunners mixed with a dribble handoff passer who's not all that effective. Jalen McDaniels, he's actually having a decent year, though he's slid recently. 130 for him in 9 cat leagues. PJ Washington, feast or famine, more so than normal. 125, despite some really big stat lines followed up by obvious duds. Nobody beyond that. And then again on Nick Richards, I'd made a big play on him in Fab, in like week 2 or 3 for teams that had specific needs at center. He has not been able to steal or block the ball, and though he has played well at times, he's doing the kinds of things that veteran coaches do not like, especially when paired up with a veteran in Mason Plumlee. So while I was high on him early, I would say that I've dropped him in a couple places. In terms of his overall outlook and profile, the lack of steals and blocks is definitely concerning. Maybe it's a scheme-driven thing. He's never been a big blocks guy, but this is bad. I mean, 0.8 per game, 18.8 minutes. I guess it's not that bad, but if you're his size with his athleticism and sort of what his value proposition is on the floor is athleticism and flying around, and you're still sort of staying home and rebounding, yes, is good, but paint protection would be definitely good for his fantasy game. And I think it would be good for his minutes overall too. He's just not as aggressive as he needs to be on the floor. Gordon Hayward might come back soon. I mean, that will muddy the waters there. Dennis Smith Jr., if he's ever back on the floor, he's obviously getting his numbers. You're not going anywhere with that with LaMelo Ball around. So kind of a boring situation for a team that's typically been pretty fun. Chicago, and I noticed in this stage of the alphabet for the teams, there are not a lot of surprises, and I guess that's a good thing. But it was just something I noticed. Usually the board gets shook up a little bit more than I'm seeing this year. At any rate, weird aside. DeMar DeRozan, 32 in 9 cat. Vucevic, 36. Levine, 64. Again, this is exactly what we thought would happen. Caruso, 136. And this is where it gets sort of bad for the Bulls. Pat Williams, 150. Ayo, 160. Now, keep in mind, this is a 9 cat league, so your Ayo Dosunmu, though he's not a big turnover guy, 1.5, does hit a little bit harder the lower you get in the ranks. Ayo's in the middle of a slump right now. Now, he was saving/carrying certain teams of mine that got hit with injuries just simply because he started off decent enough, healthy. You just kind of could count on 125 at minimum most nights. Now that they are at sort of full strength and your main ball handlers on the floor, you're not seeing him handle much, even though he is still putting up numbers from time to time. Overall, 28 minutes per game, 10.5 points, 3.3 boards, 2.8 assists. 1.1 combined steals and blocks is light, and you'd like to see more out of a guy who has his athleticism, but I think he's just been sort of put in a box, you know. He's just doing a lot of running up and down the floor, you know, from corner to corner as the other guys orchestrate the offense, and then defensively it doesn't feel like he's getting involved as much as you would like, and that could have to do with his teammates. You know, DeMar DeRozan is getting a little long in the tooth. Zach LaVine is kind of peg-legged out there. And I guess I should bring that up in case people, I don't know, haven't noticed. Zach LaVine's in kind of a world of hurt. And could this guy grind out a season and, you know, play above sort of ADP or my expectations and not miss a ton of games, you know, sort of beat the odds? Because right now the odds say his knee isn't looking good. You know, we said that in preseason. He's been going now for a bit, and he's had a couple big games. I bet you could offload Zach LaVine and get out of that risk. But in terms of IO, he needs one of he or DeMar DeRozan to sort of exit stage left. But he will be buoyed by the fact that this group, you know, outside of DeMar DeRozan, but like LaVine, Caruso, maybe even somebody like Vucevic, who's not missed much time, if any, this year. You know, his age, I mean, he's not that old, but it just doesn't seem unlikely that he, you know, would miss some time. And why I bring that up is that's another guy who handles the ball. So Io has a way to this low end, solid floor where, you know, you could rely on that and then have the upside. As this Bulls team goes, and I believe they'll fall out of contention, I think you'll start to see the, you know, kind of the key decisions, say in March or April. You know, do you push Zach LaVine through, you know, like a back-to-back? Or, I mean, they will be in contention due to the 9-10 slot thing. They'll be in contention down the stretch. But, you know, if it gets real bad, which it could potentially get real bad, who knows? You know, I'm building the case for IO in terms of hanging on through this rough stretch. And I know a lot of you guys were 125 plays, 100 plays. You're going to have a lot of pressure, not just right now, but in the coming month, I would think, to drop IO. And he'll be somebody that will go pretty quick if, you know, the aforementioned situation with the injuries, if that happens, everybody's going to jump on that right away. So you might not get him back if you put him on the waiver wire. Other than that, that's too much time on Chicago. Let's keep it moving into Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell, clear winner so far. He is missing time right now, but doesn't seem like it's serious. And then obviously that means Darius Garland is probably the loser, and at 65 and 9 cat. I wouldn't call him a loser because he's a very good basketball player. 3.4 turnovers is definitely dragging him down there. I think, though, they're feeling it out, and it would not be surprising to see Donovan Mitchell give his value over to Darius Garland for, say, the next third of the season. And who knows who would win that in the last third of the season. But Donovan Mitchell looks great. Jared Allen, 57, and Mobley at 66 is actually better than I thought it'd be. You know, just looking at this for the first time in a couple weeks here for Cleveland. It's a testament to the power of his fantasy game, but it definitely seems like he is sort of the odd man out with some of the usage and touches issues. They don't run a lot of stuff for him, it feels like. And still, though, 15 points, 9 boards, 0.9 steals, 1.4 blocks. That's still very good. The foul shooting needs to improve, but we know that. Beyond that, there's really nobody on that team worth much attention in fantasy circles, even if guys get injured. So Cleveland, pretty predictable team. Always in the running for the most boring fantasy team in the NBA. It's Dallas, who's gotten even worse, I feel like, somehow, with the, Luka and who else. Though Spencer Dinwiddie, 63, he's buoyed by a huge game tonight. I bet he jumped 10, maybe even 20 ranks after a game like that with Luka out. And so he's the only one, really. I mean, Christian Wood, you have to respect some of the elements of his game with 17 points, 8 boards, only 1 combined steal and block. And the free throw number obviously sucks. We've never pushed Christian Wood here. So this is what it is for him. 144, 2.4 turnovers because of some of the ball handling duties. I just don't think you could even get excited this team would have to lose Luka and completely change the way they play. And Christian would have to get all the usage, and I think at that point he might live up to some of the name value there. The big surprise, I think, it's one of those niche-y sort of things, is Dorian Finney-Smith, just 160, and really looks, especially after the playoff run last year, looks like he's lost his confidence offensively. Mini indictment of Luka there, in terms of making teammates better. I think that there's something to be said for that brand of ball. It's probably, really good in the playoffs, and it probably always will be, and that's the important thing, right? But in terms of getting up and over the hump, that might not be, the best odds long-term strategy if you're Luka Doncic. But you've got to make your players better around you. There's just too much standing around and watching Luka do stuff, and you got to get guys involved other than getting the assist. So that's the probably the standing rant on Luka. But I don't want to bet against that guy, because he's like on, if I had to put on one hand players I would not want to face in the playoffs, it's definitely Luka Doncic. Nothing for Kemba Walker. I don't think anybody really needed to hear that, but let's just say it anyway. Dallas, very boring. And Denver, very boring. Jokic sort of climbing up the ranks. He's at 5 now in 9 cat. This will be a slow march back up toward number 1. And there's a lot of reasons. I mean, this is a buy low moment for Nikola Jokic. It's kind of been a buy low moment for a while. They don't look energized at all. Denver, you just never know with those guys. Tim Connolly leaving. There's some of the stuff with ownership. I mean, and sometimes they look like a top, say, 15 organization, and sometimes they look like a top 25 organization, which is the bottom half of the NBA. I think you can honestly build a case for them to lag the first third of the season, so they don't, put too much energy in early. But that's, I think, affected the Jokic rank, and I think in general their win-loss record. And you got Jamal Murray coming back. They got a lot of reasons why that makes sense. Jamal Murray coming back. Michael Porter still not really able to stay on the floor. 75 for Porter. I think a lot of people celebrated too early with that one. Aaron Gordon, 80. That's actually better than a lot of people thought. Yes, there's been added opportunity, and he continues to add to his game. It's not a great fantasy game, but it's, in terms of his ball handling and some of the precision with some of what he does, I think he's really trying to become a point guard at this stage. Just 2.1 assists, but and maybe that's why he shouldn't be a point guard, is how much he handles in relation to how many assists he gets. Yes, he plays next to Jokic, but enough on Aaron Gordon. Bruce Brown, 103, no surprise there. Jamal Murray, 110, still getting it figured out. I would say it's buy low territory. I think people have Jamal Murray fatigue, and he looks great, for where he's at. And yeah, there's going to be risk, but I mean, 110, I don't think it changes to this in a 9-cat league, but he could go 50/75 real easy, 8-cat, 9-cat, and I think he's not valued like that out there. So anyway, Jamal Murray back and doing stuff. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 110. That's his territory. Bones has rehabbed his value to 160. I mean, it got real bad, and he's had some flu stuff, and it's just been a stop-start sort of a deal for him. 2.8 threes, 40% shooting, 82% from the foul line on 2.4 attempts per game. And we really aren't just, scratching the surface here with him. If anything happens to like Jokic, he would be a guy that would possibly, not go through the roof, but, top 75, that kind of stuff, because they'd have to turn the offense over to somebody other than Jamal Murray. He would be a likely candidate to create shots. Okay, we went deep down the rabbit hole for Denver. Let's not do that. Detroit. Oh, Detroit. So I was happy to pick up Jalen Duren about 10 days before he got the starting job. That happened because Jalen Duren was outside the top 200 and not really blocking shots. And at the same time, if you watched him play, you definitely see the outlines of why he should continue to get minutes for that team. Yeah, he plays for Dwayne Casey. Yeah, it could be, some zigzaggy stuff, but it sounds like they may have turned the corner on it. You have no reason not to play the guy. You drafted him where you drafted him, and yes, there's going to be some rookie issues, but at minimum, he rebounds well. And that in of itself provides a stability for what he does, out there on the floor. You know what you're getting out of him if you're Dwayne Casey. So if you play him off the bench 22 minutes, or if you play him as a starter, it almost doesn't matter, and you could slowly crank his minutes up, something like 27, 28 toward the end of the year, and really have a nice, smooth development path. Where he stands fantasy-wise is 230 in his 22 minutes per game in a 9-cat league, so that's not great. I think that reflects, obviously, it's the free throw shooting at 48.9%. It reflects the low block rate, which I really don't think is him. I don't think I got this sense in his game that he's really, that tepid from the blocks, or in the blocks category. So I would expect a little bit of a bump there. I think offensively, getting more involved as the season goes on, that's all good stuff. I mean, he looks to me like a top 100 center, say, within about a month. So in a league that 150 with 2 centers plays, I think that's good enough upside. And I think I'm trying to be conservative there. It can be hard on big men in the NBA. I guess it's hard at any position, but if you're a big man and you're not dominant with your athleticism or some elements of your game, if you're just sort of the run-of-the-mill rookie that's got the athletic package, but you're raw and you don't have a whole lot of offense, the defensive side of the equation, if you're not locked in there, which rookies often aren't, we're seeing this with some of the big men. That'd be a conversation we can have, as we get to Indy and some of these other spots, is if you're not there, you can fall off pretty quick. Loaded topic with the Pacers, and they're going to be around the corner here, so we'll leave that there. During those, maybe, I don't want to say the most excited, because I'm looking at a guy's name, Killian Hayes, and I'm not excited, but I tell you, he might finally, be there down the stretch in fantasy leagues. 37.2% from the field. 180 in his 24 minutes, but you're starting to see him not disappearing. You're starting to see him make plays during games. He had the big game the other, I want to say 10 days ago, where he hit a couple shots late. Granted, those shots were ugly looking and they barely went in, but they went in, and it was a huge game for him. It really represented as sort of a celebration. I think he's been so, at times bad, but, it's been a rough pick. It's been a rough go for him. So getting those big plays could have been a growth moment, and I hope, just rooting for a young player to get good. I hope this is a turning point for him. I don't have him anywhere, but I know a lot of people who do, and that to me, as well as with his play, I'm definitely watching for him to be a top 100 to 150 guy, sort of at minimum going forward. So he's at 180 on the season right now. That would represent a big jump, but that's just kind of my gut talking there. Alec Burks, he's at 165 in his 20 minutes per game. 0.9 turnovers, so that's a 9-cat number, so it's obviously not good. They haven't really leaned into him, and I think for good reason. They have these other players that are still healthy for the most part, though Cade Cunningham is down. But, Jaden Ivey, the fantasy numbers aren't there because of the turnovers, because of the bad percentages. Everything else is there, even the overall play. You watch him play, and you're like, okay, I can see a future in the near future, where you're doing stuff, you're a threat. And, there's been times where he's controlled ball games. I watched it against the Kings. He's not perfect. He's not doing everything, but in terms of, defensively, offensively, what was the gravity of the situation? He was right at the middle of it all. So I don't think he's still on wires despite the bad rank. If he is, I think you got to pick him up, barring these situations where you can't really have that kind of dead weight, on an ongoing basis. Even then, just the talent, and it's Detroit. They're going to start falling out of, or going into the tank race here fairly soon. Sadiq Bey, 133. He should be a lot better going forward. Marvin Bagley, he's alternated. I've seen some good stuff out of him to the point where I thought, hey, maybe Bagley's turning a corner, and, because of the notoriety and the changes of location and just, bad play and injuries, it's like, okay, nobody thinks Bagley's going to be good. Then he has fallen off, and he's fallen off lately, but he did enough to just kind of make me footnote that, hey, he's not completely out of this thing. They gave him enough money too, to where he might just get those courtesy minutes because of the contract. So in a deeper league, don't be surprised if he runs at top 100 for a stretch. And, if you catch it at the end of the year and he doesn't get hurt, we might be surprised looking at Bagley for say a 2-month stretch at the end of the year where he hung on and, gave you that top 100 value. At any rate, that's enough on Bagley. Stewart, 115. That to me represents a mini win, because he's had so much hype and not delivered in the past. And that's a safe number for him. Compared to where he was being drafted. So, a win there. Bojan Bogdanovic at 96. Boring. All right. So next up is Golden State. And for Golden State, Klay's obviously hot right now. That's helped out a lot of our squads. I noticed that Klay kept falling to us. And I really wasn't thinking the back-to-back thing would be a huge deal. When the news came out that he wasn't going to play back-to-backs all year, I didn't believe it. And then now we're at the point where they're talking about, hey, he's going to play back-to-backs. So games off, yes, that I think is a foregone conclusion, but it doesn't make sense for them to not train him to play back-to-backs. And this is a guy who wants to play. It's a guy who has a lot to prove. And really, frankly, he's got to kind of work through some mental issues. This is a guy who's really ethereal. He wants to, as I say that, I'm thinking this guy is probably, when he plays, doesn't hear a damn thing. But you could tell he's been struggling, and you could tell that it's gotten to him. So I think he's going to want to play, and I think he's going to want to rip it up. Curry at 2. I feel like this is the year we kind of went light on Curry. I mean, not really, but I don't personally have him anywhere, and watch him be at number 2. I shed a little bit of a tear, but no surprise there. Andrew Wiggins, 25. I mean, we were pretty high on Wiggins. I kind of feel like he's always overdrafted, so we didn't get a ton of him. But 25, especially on this team with the aging veterans and he being sort of at the peak of his career, I hope you guys got him. I feel like I didn't. Draymond Green, 91. Actually, I look at that as a pretty damn good win, given his start to his season, some of the ineffectiveness issues. Feels like, especially letting him quarterback the second unit, that's been a good move for him. So 91 in a 9-cat league. I call that a win. Kevin Looney, 140. A little bit better than probably expected than Jordan Poole. This is the one I think people want to hear from me on. Jordan Poole. Listen, guys, shooting guards especially, we're going to call him a shooting guard for the sake of this exercise. Shooting guards are notoriously long-term fluctuations. They go up and down over 2-month spans. So Poole, after getting his block knocked off, which, I mean, man, that's a really big deal. The team leader, guy who's going to the Hall of Fame as a Warrior, knocks you out. And what happens with that? That happened so late in the draft season that it was really hard to react to. And certain situations, it might not matter. You throw it all in a box, and with this Warrior squad, it ended up, to me, I think it all worked out, to starting him off with a slump. I think that the traveling and the palming calls is he became the poster boy for that. So at any rate, there are so many regressibles going in his favor right now that, I hope you bought low. I hope that, heaven forbid he hit your waiver wire. But I think this one, they're going to need players like Poole to be good all year long. They need Jordan Poole to really push it. And I think, this has sort of been a worst case scenario for him. Get on it. 3 turnovers a game is pushing him at 150 right now. I think he'll probably improve that number, and I think he will get better from the 3-point line. I think he will get better in general, sort of across the board, as these Warriors start to thin out. So that is your Jordan Poole take. Kuminga. I don't think he's a big fantasy guy, but I think that he might be ready to go a little bit more full speed. Moving out of Golden State, let's get into Houston, where I think, it's sort of the super obvious thing. Kevin Porter, Jalen Green, just not going to rank highly because of efficiency issues. Talent, Jalen Green, he's got it. 21.3 points per game. But this situation, eventually I think he'll get that cleaned up. But, with this particular team, it just isn't working. And then they want to run through Alperen Sengun, I don't know how much that helps these guards. I think this is a team sort of fighting, not fighting, but trying to figure out its identity. Yes, do you want to make St. John work out? Yeah, it makes a lot of front office people look good if he goes well. You look and you get those comparisons that aren't obviously fair to Nikola Jokic, and you're like, maybe we can find the next one of him. And so it makes sense. He's at 90 in 9-cat leagues. 2.3 turnovers per game, and that in 27 minutes per game. We've always said for him the key is going to be the free throw, getting that into a good place, which he has done at 79%, 3.9 free throws per game. He's sort of treading water with that. It's still, a little bit negative, but it's a win because you didn't know, was it going to be 70, on a big number. Still not hitting threes. Defense, obviously, not where you want it to be. You want the assist number to be better. I think it's probably a win or a draw right now for fantasy managers that took the plunge there. But you're seeing him work awfully hard in 27 minutes per game. With you guys got Bruno Fernando there, Usman Garuba. They probably don't want to go away from those guys. Do they really want to max out St. John at 30 minutes per game, especially because those guards need their touches? You got a guy in Terry Eason who, fantasy managers love at 125 in a 9-cat league, 0.8 turnovers. So in an 8-cat league, more of a 150 guy. And he's doing his damage in 18.8 minutes per game. And man, that's going to pop. I really don't think you can go away from that. I saw him pop up on a wire, and somebody fabbed him for, new term there, fabbed him for like 700 of 1,000. $5. It's like, wow. I mean, but I get it. It's a lot to pay. Obviously, those big bids are, sort of a topic of their own. But it's not there yet. It will be there down the stretch, and it will be fun. So plan accordingly. I couldn't let him pass by if I saw him in almost any league because I'm always hunting upside. That's just me. Kenyon Martin Jr., for a guy who puts up a lot of decent numbers, it's very sporadic. That's always been the case with him. 235 in a 9-cat league. Bruno Fernando, real quick, he and Garuba, I don't think there's any case to grab those guys right now. I would go Fernando over Garuba. And you're basically just hoping that, you've got a, sort of a defensive producer, 0.8 blocks, 13.6 minutes per game. I mean, you could see him being a bigger blocks guy. Those guys are kind of hard to find. So I would go Bruno if you're in a deep league looking to stash a center, as many people are. Jabari Smith, how'd he get to the end of the Rockets segment? Totally disappointing. He was like the one rookie I kind of went in and supported in the B150 of the group. It's not good. It's 1.0 blocks, I think is bad, 38.4% field goal shooting. This this team hasn't really turned to him and said, hey, we want to make you a priority. This is the problem with the Houston Rockets is you have all these other priorities. Jalen Green, priority. Even Kevin Porter is a priority with the way they let him play. So Jabari Smith has really sat off to the side and dealt with the fluctuations of being a player that's off on the side. Will he get better? Yeah. 130? Is that cutting it? No. Especially with 1.2 turnovers. He's not in that top 80 range, which is where he was drafted to be. Okay. Let's move it into Indy, and we will talk about Tyrese is kind of where we thought he would be at 8. Miles Turner, 17. Man, he is hit or miss in terms of how he actually plays, but those stat lines work, and they really work. And really, you need to move Miles Turner. You need to do that right now, because whether it's getting traded to a place, LA, I think that might be oversold at this point, but he's begging to get out of there. Indy is crazy if they continue to play this game where they try to keep him around. He doesn't fit the style of play that Tyrese Halliburton, Andrew Nebhard, even Mathurin, like he's just sort of out there trying to do things that he's okay at, but not good enough to tilt the offense his direction. And Indy wants him to go big. He wants to go big, but it's, the identity needs to be around, something more of like a pick and roll. I say Isaiah Jackson, and obviously I'm biased because of the big rank, and we all kind of want Isaiah Jackson to do well, but at least with him that he's going to set a screen, and the best odd strategy for a bucket is to roll hard to the hoop, and that's what Tyrese Halliburton, that's what Nembhard, they are going to thrive on that stuff. And pair a guy like Jalen Smith next to those guys where he can step out and hit the three. I mean, they got a really good combination. You go Tyrese Halliburton, Nembhard, Mathurin, Smith, and Jackson as sort of a core 5 unit. That's going to be a fast, athletic, you could even argue defensive minded, just because of some of that length. They would struggle against teams with size. You would have to find a solution for that. I mean, Goga could be the sort of tanking solution, but they're not tanking and they're winning games. And Rick Carlisle's coaching like he's coaching for the playoffs. And, Herb Simon's probably sitting there in the background, owner of the Pacers, prodding them along to go get a 8, 9, 10 seed. And in reality, they need to turn this team over to these other guys and let them grow. Jackson, okay, 225 and 16 minutes per game. Knee stuff. I mean, it's terrible. And Carlisle is holding him to kind of a higher standard. You can tell on the floor. He does the kind of classic young player stuff of, one step forward, one step back. There's times he's absolutely dominant, and then he'll miss on an assignment by just that split second that a player of his age will miss on, and then Carlisle's like, nope, you're out. And that's rough. That's Carlisle. I mean, on one hand, you could look at it and say Carlisle's coaching him like a player who he wants to get better, and holding him to that high standard. The other side of it is obviously let him play through that stuff. Let him stay on the floor. But again, you got Miles Turner there, and that move hasn't happened yet. And they're just not being as aggressive with Jackson as I think they should be. And at the same time, Jackson hasn't made it on his end a matter of no doubt, going out there and just sort of putting the pedal to the metal. Jalen Smith, same thing. And frankly, I'll just leave it at this. If you're evaluating a team and a coach and you're saying, here's these 2 young players we like, and we're going to, in the case of Smith, pay him a little bit of money, sort of bestow upon him some title, saying, these are our guys, and they're not playing well, I think that's a reflection of the coach. So hopefully this is one of those things where it's the first third of the season, everything's tougher. The bonus situation of a trade, I think it's one of these things we have to be cognizant of, that we don't get too attached to it, because if it goes down to the trade deadline, which it could, we've seen teams where players just had to be traded. It was stupid if they didn't, and then they didn't. So we do have to keep in our mind that this idea of a trade may not happen. Is it likely? I would say it's probably better than 50% that Miles Turner would go. And you would want Buddy Hield to go because he's gobbling up a tons of shots, rebounds, and assists as well. He's sitting at 70, Buddy Hield. So that's where we thought he would be. Nembhard, 145, actually, in his 25 minutes per game. Really a sneaky, stealthy 25 minutes per game. I mean, he wasn't on the radar at all until that big game. I should say probably the injuries subsequent to that big game. But, just sort of sitting in the background. And when you have Halliburton taking up all that usage, and Buddy Hield, he's only out there to score. So that's taking up usage. Miles Turner doing what he's doing, as discussed. It's hard for a guy like Nembhard to get his numbers, but you saw the other night, he is somebody that they probably internally know they have to get the ball. Maybe not in a rush to do so, but they know that he needs the ball. He's got to be rostered in practically almost any format, I would think. I mean, at 145, 1.4 turnovers per game, you could start him at 150. I mean, yes, these top 75 leagues, the Vespers leagues, you can't maybe do that. You can hope to find a spot on your roster. I think you would just kind of bend over backwards to do that, because at some point they're going to turn this guy loose and you're going to have a little bit of fun. Isaiah Jackson, I think if you're in a league where 75 plays and roster space is not just sitting there and you are concerned about your standings, I think you can drop him. In 16 minutes per game, he's getting you 1.2 blocks. So, fast forward to February or March, and if you're in a playoff format, this absolutely matters. Fast forward to February, March, 25 minutes per game, 1.8, 1.9, 2 blocks, and maybe they wrap the offense around him. and then you're looking at a top 50 player at that rate. And if they were, really hitting the pedal to the metal, it could actually even be more than that. So the upside is tremendous. But that's where I sit with Isaiah Jackson, is do what you can to hang on with him. I wouldn't drop him in a competitive format that's got 200 players on rosters. I just wouldn't do it. Anyway, we move on to the Clippers. Paul George, 24. Zubac, 87. Really, I think, George injury stuff, 20 games out of, it looks like 28 for the Clippers. Early season stuff, I guess I'm okay with it. I mean, yeah, it's not paying off right now. We had Paul George a little bit higher than others, mostly because I think people just didn't respect his upside. I saw Paul George go, 30, 35? No, 30, I think is what I saw him go for. And that's just too late, I think. Even speaking just strictly roto, if you're in a playoff format, and I mean, I know that's a loaded question with when a guy might sit in April or March, Paul George, could single-handedly tilt the playing field for your squad. So, letting him drop that far in drafts, I just don't think I could get behind it. At any rate, not where we want him to be, but he had a big line last night. It's obvious what he's capable of. Zubac, 90, doing his thing. Marcus Morris cooled off, but at 115 in a 9-cat league. Yeah, it's going to be bad, I think, now that the band is back together. Kawhi, I mean, probably had him too high. I don't have him on any rosters, and I would say I was probably middle of the pack with my ranking, and I probably had him too high. I should have known better. This is not a healthy player, and it might be worse than we think. I know that there's, being through the worst part, you might as well just stick with it. You might as well see what you got. You could even buy low right now because I think the market is so bad for Kawhi Leonard. I think overall you have to sort of project him to play 75% of the rest of the games. And then in terms of effectiveness, there's going to be a slide. Like, he's good with his strength. He's good getting to his spots, but around the edges, you're going to see decreases in numbers pretty much right away. I think that's all I got for the Clippers and Lakerland. Anthony Davis, I mean, there's been times he's looked really bad defensively, but it never hit the stat sheet. Number 1 overall on 9-cat, having an Anthony Davis year. The story there. LeBron at 40. Probably a good spot to project him going forward, without getting too much into it. Lonnie Walker, 120, so he's doing his part, maybe even a little bit better than most people thought. Reeves at 160, just sort of sitting there out there on the sideline, tantalizing you, but not getting quite up over the hump. Thomas Bryant, in his 11 games, is at 190. No, we don't think Thomas Bryant suddenly got playable in the NBA, but the Lakers need him. And he can, in fairness, for fantasy, he can actually put up some numbers in a short spurt. So when he gets these spot start opportunities, definitely look his way. Russell Westbrook, 205, 3.6 turnovers, 40 and 70%. But if you get rid of those turnovers, he can be somewhat serviceable in an 8-cat format. And depending on your build, you could actually, especially in those head-to-head leagues, you can get something better than that. And I do think there's room for growth here. I mean, these shooting numbers, they can't be this bad forever. Yeah, they can. But I actually like the potential of him to get traded somewhere, for a team that's blowing it up. But I don't have that scenario worked out. It seems to me that if you wanted to do it right, you're a bad team that's blowing it out. Take on Russell Westbrook, get some assets, and give your fans something to watch. Anyway, Lakers, boring. Dennis Schroeder, sort of on the bottom of the 12 to 14 team talk. I think he'll be better than he's been recently. They definitely need what he has. It's a bad place for him to be for fantasy value because of those big name players, but that's probably the only other place that I would be looking that's not already on the radar. And definitely not doing the Pat Bev thing right now. I think he's going to struggle the rest of the way, whether it's being on the court or production. Memphis. So you just came and took my value, basketball gods. Desmond Bane was so obvious, and he went at 50, 55. I don't know why. This one was just sitting there for us. We all got him. I got him everywhere. The question was, would I take him in the 4th or the 5th round? Always got scared and took him in the 4th, I think. Maybe I got him in the 5th in a couple leagues. At any rate, this thing sucks, but it does sound like he is coming back in 3 weeks. And I said in the Discord channel, I think people are not quite sold that he's coming back and healthy. And I'll just say this. It sounded like Jenkins thought, hey, as long as something new doesn't happen, he's coming back. And hopefully this is just an example of a team trying to get ahead of something and being a little bit more cautious. Jaren Jackson, 13 and 9 cat, and talk about a gift. I got him in one league. He just dropped too far. And, coming back early-ish and, just right back in the mix, 3.2 blocks per game, 75.5% from the free throw line. So you're starting to see, these potential big swings for value, maybe getting that Jaren Jackson season that we haven't quite had. John Morant, 78 and 9 cat, obviously better in 8 cat. Percentages, efficiencies, having to shoulder too much of the burden. Santi Aldama, 90 and 25 minutes per game. You might not give up on him in a deeper league just yet. John Konkar, 90. I was glad to get him in those Bane spots because it's that handcuff situation. Konkar is a good fantasy asset. So, and a good player, really. Not great player, but he's a good player. And I think it's good to have him on your fantasy roster. And we'll see. After Bane comes back, he might not just go away. Dylan Brooks is Dylan Brooks, and Tyus Jones is at 190, and he's Tyus Jones. If you're the Grizzlies and you hitched your wagon to Tyus Jones instead of DeAnthony Melton, that's not smart. I don't have anything else in Memphis. I don't think. I do not. Let's get out of there. Miami. Butler, good. Not on the floor. Bam, 40. I think that was what we expected. Tyler Hero, 45. It's pretty good, but only 19 games. Kyle Lowry, 60. Huge win. 26 games. Huge win. Caleb Martin, 100. I think that's what we had him ranked. And I don't think he's going away, folks. I definitely wouldn't have moved away from him. They need him. And yeah, he's dealt with his own injury issues, but I just think he's probably less injured than the other guys. Gabe Vincent, 250. Pardon me. We're catching a little cold over here. Gabe Vincent, he's hurt. Just outright hurt. And it seems bad, so no good for a guy that we really like. Strus, 123, I think also concerns with injury. This is a banged-up squad. Haywood Highsmith, keeping my eye on him, though the numbers aren't great. Actually, Nikola Jovic is the one that his stat set's not quite there, but I feel like he could evolve into something that would be interesting down the road. So I'll be watching him next season. And that's it for Miami. Let's get out of Miami, and we will get into Milwaukee. Might pick up the pace here a little bit and try to get through these a little faster. So it's the first time we've touched base on a lot of this stuff, so I don't want to skimp. Milwaukee, Brook Lopez, huge year, and yeah, it's a sell-high moment because a lot of those shots are going to go over to Chris Middleton. Middleton back now. Drew Holiday, 34. Giannis with the free throw thing and the turnovers as well. In a 9-cat league, he's a top 100 player, so that's 4 turnovers per game, 63% foul shooting. Those numbers should bounce back, but the issue with him isn't going away. The foul shooting isn't going away. I don't know what to say other than that. And it kind of is what it is. I don't think he's going to be this bad the rest of the way, but that's going to leave a mark. And yeah, the ball handling is because Chris Middleton's out. So that will get better, but it's just a bad equation overall. Bobby Portis, 100. I look for him to take a little bit of a hit here, but he might fix that by becoming a little bit more efficient in other places. Grayson Allen doing his thing at 110. No surprise there. And we move on. Milwaukee to Minnesota, where, this one was super obvious. Cat, 27, Rudy Gobert, 40. Gobert is crushing it now because Cat's out, but together that was just never going to be, something where they lived up their ADP. Anthony Edwards, a little bit disappointing at 40. I think he's sort of trying to figure out how to take control of this team and not really knowing what to do, considering the big names are ahead of him, at least in terms of franchise standing, perhaps. But they're the guys that you made the big bet on, Cat and Gobert. So I think Anthony Edwards probably wants to do more, and I think people probably want him to do more. But 40 is where he's at for now. D'Angelo Russell, 70. I think he looks actually more athletic. I don't think it's going to help him overall, but I think it's just good to see him, lean out a little bit. Jaden McDaniels, 95. He might be my favorite one of the squad because he carries less name value and has a great 1-1 right now. And you see the makings of a pretty good fantasy game if he lands in the right spot. Kyle Anderson, the beneficiary for the Cat stuff. Jalen Noel, still too inconsistent for fantasy leagues. He's at 243 on the year, and he gets a lot of ball handling opportunity. Doesn't really translate into turnovers, but the shooting percentage isn't great, and then the defensive numbers aren't there. So he really needs a lot of volume to be good. So if you can swallow those deficiencies and he gets cut loose at any point in time this year, he could actually be really good for your fantasy squad, but you got to have a build that supports that. Let's get out of Minnesota and let's move it on to, New Orleans. And this team's just killing me. I mean, there's no reason for Herb Jones to be injured. He's injured early in the year, and it's just, why? Imagine just screaming at the clouds, why? Brandon Ingram already dealing with his injury stuff and looking like a world beater prior to that. Why? I think we got a decent amount of Brandon Ingram on squads. And then, just in general with this squad, you got just so much to watch. It's a great team to watch. Zion at 40 in 9-cat leagues. That's really good. I don't think I'm jumping on the Zion hype train. I mean, those numbers are going to claw back with Brandon Ingram coming back. 60% from the field, 72.3% from the foul line. I mean, this might be a high watermark for him, and you kind of don't want to say that with somebody like him who's young, could be better, but I think this is a high watermark for him. Trey Murphy, 50 per game, obviously benefiting from a lot of injuries, 95.5% from the foul line. My word. No, he's not going to shoot that all year. Is it a thing to watch, in terms of his overall value? Because, again, he's not going to get these 29 minutes per game. He's that good. Or let me rephrase that. He's good. I think Herb Jones has a chance to be super special, but Trey Murphy might be right there behind him, just a different kind of, maybe more offensively focused style, a little less elite on defense. Herb Jones has the ability to be transformative if he puts it all together. Think like early career Kawhi Leonard in terms of what he was, especially as he came into the league as a defensive player, Mikal Bridges, where, you're saying this guy could be the best defensive player in the league and also bring you offense. And oh, by the way, defense is half of the game. So injury issues have completely taken the steam out of his fantasy season. 150 is sort of the worst case scenario for him, 28 minutes per game for Herb Jones. So there's a lot of room for him to get better. I'm hoping that there's not something serious going on that's going to be lingering all year. Jose Alvarado, 130. I believe that's his exact ranking to be 150. Jonas Valanciunas, 135. I mean, we faded him. And at first, I don't think it looked great, but it definitely looks good now. I think there's room for him to be a lot better. That's for sure. CJ McCollum at 85. He might get tired of, sort of turning the team over to these other guys. He's probably got about another 20 ranks of improvement in him. Larry Nance at 80. No surprise there. It's just so inconsistent. And obviously with the injury risk, it's hard to wrangle value for Larry Nance. I think that's enough here for New Orleans. Let's move into New York. This team, it's like sometimes you feel like they're better than expectations, and then you think sometimes that they just have no idea what they're doing. Jalen Brunson at 50, that's a win for fantasy GMs. Julius Randle 70, a little bit better lately. I think that's where he will sit. Mitchell Robinson 80, I think that's where he will sit. Hartenstein 120, despite the nightmare season. And when I say nightmare, I mean this guy was kind of showing why we were excited. He seemed to be in the catbird seat. Mitchell Robinson was hurt, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like, oh, I've been injured all year. And you start to see the slippage with the numbers that you're kind of accustomed to, and it's like, it's like they took the cheese again. A little bit of life lately. I mean, at minimum, there's an all-star break at some point in time to get him, rested up. I would kind of rate him where he's at right now, 120 in a 9-cat league and 130-ish. Maybe don't go as big in an 8-cat league. Yeah, the turnover number is really low. I think eventually, let me rephrase it. I think you got to treat him as a 120 guy just because he has this innate ability to be a high-end defender in the league if he's healthy. And a high-end big man defender can, really put up some good stats if you're like Isaiah Hartenstein, who has a decent per-minute stat set. But the way they're using him is actually problematic. They're not letting him handle the ball, and they're just sort of treating him like he's Mitchell Robinson, which he's not. Though they will get out of that, and he will sort of do his thing even despite the fact they're using him. He does it from time to time, and you start to see some of those things happen, but I would say it's a bit of a swing and a miss so far for the Hartenstein stuff. I'm out there on the front lines banging the drum. I thought I was as high as anybody on him, but people were snagging him from me in drafts. I don't know if they were just going on the B150 or what, but I'm still a fan of the player. I got to know that he's healthy before I'll go to the well or lead the fight. So let's see if he's healthy. Emmanuel Quickley, 175 in a 9-cat league right now. Plays a little bit better in an 8-cat league. All of the elements of Emmanuel Quickley are there. I think I was a little bit ahead of people on that one, so I have him as sort of a backup guard, and he had some moments here and there in a deeper league. It's like, okay, I'll hang on to Emmanuel Quickley. Okay, his name's in trade rumors. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And then you sort of flip the script and you go in New York. Do they want to either promote him or even possibly look at him as a bigger minute guy? I mean, you got Derrick Rose, and yes, Tibbs loves Derrick Rose, but it seems like they're kind of already turning the page there. You got these guys in Randall and RJ Barrett who really, frankly, don't deserve the touches that they're getting. Are they good? Can Randall be good? And is Randall being better lately? It's like he's kind of gotten the message, but like by and large, do you want those two dudes like running your basketball team? No, I'd want Emmanuel Quickley running pick and roll. I'd want his 23 minutes that he plays right now to be all about Emmanuel Quickley and really flatten out that offense. So you look at a combo, Emmanuel Quickley and Isaiah Hartenstein. I mean, you could build an offense around those two guys. So, does New York want to play him? Do they want to trade him? Can he go somewhere if a team does trade for him? New York reportedly kind of wants a pick in like the 15, 20 range. If you trade to get an Emmanuel Quickley, because you look at your 15 to 20 pick and you go, those guys never pan out. I'll take this guy. He looks like he can play. You probably want to put him to work. So there's these reasons to keep an Emmanuel Quickley, but none of them are all that clear. It's a deep league situation here. I think, if 125 plays in your league, you're probably sort of sniffing around quickly and hoping you can get a roster spot, your last roster spot, and have him in there. You're not hesitant to drop him. But as you get deeper, the upside and the current production actually works for you. RJ Barrett, 250. No surprises there. I mean, it's just the efficiencies. I know you can make up for it in certain builds, but that's RJ Barrett in a nutshell. Let's get out of New York and we'll get to OKC. And I knew this would be a long one, but here's what it is. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, no longer number one. He was just crushing it there for a bit. 92.9% from the foul line on 10 attempts per game. That'll do it. That's just amazing. And I don't get to watch enough of him to sort of, I want to know, can he be this guy? Where it's like, I'm unstoppable enough to get 10 free throws a game as an Oklahoma City Thunder guy. It's not like he's coming in with the rep. He's earning this. Can he keep being this guy? I'm super intrigued by that. And obviously you got the risks. I would move him pretty much any time between now and the end of the year. You kind of got to play the perception game. Maybe Dan Vespers can do one of his polls on this. But, could you get a top 15, 20 guy right now? Seems possible. I would do that. Top 30? Maybe. Depends on the player. It'll be a fun little exercise. Poku 120. He had a big game tonight, so, he might have been 130, 135 prior to that. I think it's going to be ugly in Oklahoma City. Josh Giddey 150 in a 9-cat league. Obviously, that 3.1 turnovers is pushing him down. Probably, if I had to guess, like 115 in 8-cat. And, you got some inconsistency, a little bit of time off. But, if you got rotating players and usages around you all this time, you play next to a guy like Shai who's taking a ton of shots. I guess that's how you get your slippage. I would say he's going to be better than that. I would say 60 to 90, 8 and 9-cat would be sort of my baseline expectation for the rest of the season. He's got to dodge the injury stuff, so if you want to adjust for that, treat him like a 75 to 100 guy. You might be able to get him for 80 and 100 or 90 and 120. It's plausible. I mean, the name is kind of big, but this is a good time to go shopping, I would say, because this is a guy that you definitely want to see play if you're Oklahoma City, if you're not tanking, if you're not worried about the injuries. Obviously, this is Oklahoma City, so we gotta constantly reframe it as that. I can't talk about these guys anymore. There is nothing good there. Let's get to Orlando, where Bol captivates on a nightly basis. Bol, I didn't have Bol at the beginning of the year, and when it started happening, I mean, there were parts of me that felt like I was late. Now, I did get Bol in a lot of leagues in the free agent bidding. I mean, I bid big. He's at 60 and 9-cat with 2.2 turnovers per game. Not surprising there because of kind of how he plays. And I mean, he puts the pedal to the metal. And in the past, you would say, don't do that, Bol. But now you're looking at it and you're saying, please do that because we want to see how good can you be. Really super weird Magic squad. Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero. These guys need the ball in their hands. Then you got point guards. You got guards that need the ball, that should have the ball. Markelle Fultz is back. He's at 265 in his 6 games. I think he's going to play like a 100, 120 guy. I think it's clicked for him. I think that's, good and fine. I think it's going to come from Paulo. It's going to come from Franz. 104 for Franz. And yeah, it's a 9-cat league, 2.6 turnovers. Yes, he's had to handle the ball a lot. Yes. I mean, his efficiency may or may not be hit by that, but I think, it's been good overall for him to have that experience. That turnover number coming down will help him in a 9-cat league. I think he's just going to kind of cruise, to a top 50, 60 finish, kind of where you drafted him. Might be a little profit there. Just a solid player, so you're good taking that risk. And it doesn't seem like he's a guy that wants to sit, or that Orlando's kind of trying to have him sit. Banchero came out gangbusters, 165. There's a free throw issue, 8.7 attempts at 75%. It's a lot of free throws. I don't think that number keeps up just because of the point guards returning. And I think, there's going to be some more chaos with this team. It's the Magic. That's kind of what happens regardless. I think too many moving bodies. Wendell Carter Jr., 75. He's out. He's been out for about a week or two. And he brings balance. And absent that balance, you get what's happening with Jonathan Isaac. What's happening with Mo Wagner. What's happening with Mo Bamba. That rotating big man crew. And you throw in Bol. I think it's just too weird. Your front court shifting so much. Expectations are shifting so much in terms of what are you expecting your teammate to play like, or how well will they play. Mo Bamba's ranged from kind of looking like the guy that people were sort of excited about, including myself, to really bad. And yeah, it could be his back. Jonathan Isaac, what are you going to do with that? I know I'm not going to jump into the Jonathan Isaac thing. I've been there, done that, and I'm just not going to do it. It's going to be a destabilizer for this team. But also, back to Bol. You're going to get his no matter what. Like, you can't stop him if he's on the floor from getting his numbers. If anything, he's going to get better. I do worry, could playing more minutes, eat at some of the block and steals rates, in just all of the rates in general. Possibly. But 60, I mean, am I happy with the purchase? Yes. Am I happy with where he's standing? Yes. I think I saw Dan call to sell high. You want to sell on Bol Bol? I think the injury history alone at least makes a case that you could sell on Bol Bol. I couldn't do it. I mean, it's too intriguing. He has some unstoppable stuff. So, yeah, he's got flaws and this and that and the other, but like, you can't not explore that. So I just think that there's enough built-in safety here to want to see where the upside goes. I mean, his bad nights have the form of a great stat line. Anyway, enough about Bol Bol. Moving into Philly, man, that was a D'Anthony Melton game for the ages. Great story in the Inquirer about how he got where he got, and you got to read it because it explains everything. I mean, if they're going to figure it out in Philly, good for them. You want this guy on the floor. Probably want James Harden off the floor. Harden at 11 really started off great, for fantasy GMs, and then the injury obviously took the steam out. 11 is good to me. 91.9% from the foul line, 6.7 attempts per game. I mean, 42% from the field. I don't know if it I can't argue with those numbers. I kind of think that, that's kind of where I think he should be. Maybe a little lower. So it's that, the injury risk, the James Harden sort of risk in general. How do things look when he is at full speed and they start either slipping or whatever goes on between him and Joel Embiid? Because it didn't look pretty between those two early on this year. A lot of body language stuff, productivity stuff. Tobias at 35. Keep doing your thing, Tobias. Obviously helped by the James Harden stuff. Probably want to rate him at like 50, 60, 70. Ranging from 9 to 8. Catley's in that order. Melton at 45. Cha-chang. Maxey 75. I thought he was a little bit off to start the year, but also dealing with the James Harden stuff isn't easy on anybody. Injury. Buy low? Yeah, buy low. Anthony Melton, man, that game was just great. We might be fans. Devin Booker, 21. That's right where you thought he would be. Mikal Bridges, 31. Actually a little disappointed in this. I thought he could, possibly crack that top 20 number with Chris Paul out, cumulatively, or probably on the entire year in a per game. But he's doing just fine, and he's got so much room to grow. It's ridiculous. And this is another team, by the way, where they stole my money. Cam Johnson, that was easy money, and they just took it from me. 71, including the game that he got injured in his 8 games. And he really didn't even look like he had kind of broken his stride yet. So he'll be back soonish. And my teams will be thankful. DeAndre Ayton sort of picked the pace up, 53. And you never really expect him to break out on a team with so much talent. And yeah, they underuse him. And every year it's like, well, what if they don't underuse him? This is a guy who's so good. He's sort of the third center in the league, behind Jokic and Embiid. But Phoenix, and then I think it's part of Ayton's personality as well. They just don't ever hit the hammer, or hit the gas pedal there. So 50, I think, is kind of good. And I think he'll be better as the year goes on. But, I might also tap the brakes on that statement. Chris Paul, 46, injury, obviously not killing his value, but chopping a couple legs out early. Let's move to Portland. I don't think it's going to be a great fantasy situation, and I don't think I pulled Gary Payton low enough in the B150, based on the injury thing. Took him down pretty far. Hopefully nobody drafted him. I guess you didn't know when his return would be, and he's got some good fantasy stuff. And I think from a reality perspective, I want to just see this team get even better. I thought their offseason acquisitions were really solid. And so other than that, Dame, 20 injuries, this is a 9-cat situation, so the 3.7 turnovers aren't working for him. I think he's close to where you'd think he would be. Simons, 40 with the Dame stuff. Probably a little higher than you would think he would be. That's going to come back. 37 minutes per game there. Jimmy Grant, 50, kind of right where we think he would be. Hart, 75. I'm never as aggressive as I should be on Josh Hart, and it's a question of just how long can he stay healthy. Nurk at 85. That's probably a pretty good spot for him. We didn't have any Nurk on our squads, and I don't think anybody there, anybody other than Drew Eubanks, who just yammed on Rudy Gobert tonight, hasn't quite hit his stride in fantasy leagues. He was better in San Antonio. Let's not do that, though. Let's go into Sacramento. Keep it quick here. Sabonis, 30. He's like one of the most consistent. Keep it quick. I'm going to talk about the Kings. He's one of the most consistent players in the league. Like, people are like complaining about his fouls. Like the broadcasts are insufferable. Talking about how he's just not refereed correctly. It's been this way his entire career. He causes a lot of contact and he fouls a lot. Anyway, 30. That's what I think most people thought he would be. Fox starting to fade now, 33. The injury stuff is concerning. I mean, he takes a lot of contact, has dealt with some injury stuff in the past. He's got that history. 35. One thing I'll say about him, he's definitely improved. The shot alone is enough to make defenses play him differently, and that opens everything up. Now, he's going to have to keep hitting his shot. I don't think he's out of the woods, and I think he became like, Steph Curry overnight. Frankly, I mean, that's the wrong comparison, but like the way the ball's been coming off his hands, it has looked like he's become a way better shooter. How high you want to put him is up for debate, but how can that happen all year long is the question there. Sell high, I think, was the mantra from Dan starting about 2 weeks ago. That was a correct mantra then. Things have probably cooled off now. You might just wait and see. Herter at 75. I think the regression might have completely hit by now. He was shooting way over his head, so he might be a little lower than this going forward. And with Keegan Murray picking up the pace, I think that they're going to go to Herter the same exact rate that they have all year, regardless of the Keegan Murray situation. So Keegan's going to have to take it from Sabonis or Fox or Monk, or Barnes, or there's going to have to be an injury, or maybe collectively they all get Keegan involved a lot more, but the way this offense is set up, it runs through Sabonis, it runs through Fox, but they love Herter, and he's the guy that sort of makes it all happen for them on the secondary action. So I kind of think Herter's just going to keep it up. I treat him as a top 100 asset going forward. Barnes at 125. I think that's where you got to rate him going forward. Murray at just 140. I think it's total buy low territory. Especially when you get a little injury like this thumb thing, and no intel there on any severity. The back stuff he was dealing with, he looks like a completely different player than 3-4 games ago. And then the confidence stuff, I mean, he had the grandmother situation where she wasn't doing well physically or health wise, and it's just sort of been a worst case scenario start for him. And I think Keegan Murray is the kind of player, like, if something happened with Fox, if something happened with Sabonis, and they said, hey, Keegan, we need you to be an initiator. We need you to do the things that we kind of know he can do. I don't want to get out over my skis and say he's a super initiator, but this is a guy where the game is slow for him. He methodically picks his spots. He has a high release point. He's got great mobility. He's got an excellent shot. He's got some finishing, skill, and defensively he can do stuff. It's, he's a really good player. He's better than 140. So buy low. Malik Monk, 140. I think there's room actually to probably buy low on Malik Monk. I'm not super ecstatic about his situation, but at 22.5 minutes per game, this is a guy who needs to play more. And there's a logjam of guards because Davion Mitchell deserves his minutes. He's only getting 20 per game right now. But, there's too many guards. But Malik Monk is a player, and I just think that he's a better player than 22.5 minutes per game. So all things together, that to me equals buy low. How does that manifest? Does he have ups and downs? Does he go underneath your league's cut line? Does he, is he playable in your top 75 formats? That I can't answer for you. That's a format question. You got to kind of look at that. But I think overall, he will be, he's the kind of guy that deserves like at least 27, 28 minutes in the NBA. So, and the Kings want him to play. So I think there's buy low mixed within that. I think that's it for Sacramento. Let's move on to San Antonio, where we've got, a lot of guys that had some buzz heading into the fantasy year. Devin Vassell, but this is going to be true of almost everybody on this team, dealing with time off, top 50, 9 cat, 1.6 turnovers per game. So, that's his 8 cat rankings. Maybe not 50, but maybe like 60, not playing the games. Maybe there's some room to buy low. I am a little worried about this squad in general. I think they might take rotating nights off. I think that might be hard to plan around. But Vassell's definitely worth it. And I think with this time off and even like coming off the bench, I think you can probably get him for like top 80, top 90. And I would absolutely pull the trigger there because I really don't think he's at risk of missing a lot of time. And I think that this top 50 production is going to be there all year when he's on the floor. Trey Jones, 80, kind of right where he was drafted. So kind of good for him. Jakob Poeltl, 90 with the bad free throw percentage. So kind of right where you thought he would go. Bassey, I will not get sidetracked on this. But if you're the Chamber of Commerce guy for Tracy, and you want people to go to your town, I suggest you act a little bit better on Twitter. 16 minutes per game, 155. 1.3 blocks per game, 71.4% from the field, 1.3 turnovers. I mean, in a deep league, I don't think he's going to get much more than that, even if all hell breaks loose in San Antonio, which kind of needs to happen because once Poeltl gets back, you got Zach Collins right behind him, and I think that will put Bassey back in the G League. 170 for Collins in his 20 minutes per game. So you're hoping if you picked up Collins with this opening here that he could be a little bit better than that. I just think Collins is this player that has sort of tantalized us with the possibility of being a good stat producer, but he's not there. So I'm not personally getting too excited there. Keldon Johnson, 175 in 9 cat leagues. I had to deal with this last year, and I know Dan's dealing with it this year. A lot of turnovers, 2.4, and then 40.8%, 73.6% from the field and from the line, respectively. It just doesn't ever add up. Could he slingshot the other direction? I've always said if he could get to 45 and 80, he would be a top 75 guy. I just don't think it's going to happen. Not on this team. Josh Richardson never really panned out. I kind of got a little bit aggressive there, but not really. He ended up being on some of these super big rosters where he drafted at the beginning of the season, and I don't think I'm too excited about his overall value proposition. Jeremy Sochin, 250. Saw those early flashes. They just haven't translated. If he can pick up steam again, I would probably give him a week of production before getting aggressive, and he might be picked up before that, so I might not end up with him should he turn it around. Let's get out of San Antonio, and let's go to Toronto. Toronto, I mean, they're struggling. They got some internal strife stuff. Scotty Barnes has been talked to by Masai Ujiri for his bad play. I think that was news that came out either in the last 48 hours. Sounds like a guy who maybe got a little big for his britches and had to get reeled in. But, you got a team where there's so many ball handlers at so many different positions that if you're Scotty Barnes and you're a ball handler and, things aren't going well and then the ball starts drifting away from you. Now he's got 14 points, 7 boards, 45.4% shooting, 66 from the foul line. He hasn't been able to find his touch. He's been dealing with some injuries. Maybe got a little bit, high in the headlines, but I think it's buy low territory. I don't think he's changed as a player. I think Toronto has, this weird little Toronto drama thing where they kind of surf through struggles of players and Nick Nurse sort of pulling the reins back. I mean, Gary Trent, he was struggling. He's at 115, so he's kind of on the rebound, 42.6% shooting there. Fred VanVleet in and out of the lineup. I think that knee is that's why VanVleet's on 0 rosters, and we said so in the B150. Like, 36% shooting there. I mean, lost explosion and again, other options. So OG Anunoby wanting to establish himself as more than just a defense or a two-way guy, even wants to show that he's an offensive force. 19 points per game there. And Siakam. Both those guys in the top 20 in 9-cat leagues, by the way. So great for fantasy GMs. Those are wins. It's just hard to develop rhythm and I think it was Ryan Wolstadt writing about this, you don't have enough guards on this team to keep the tempo balanced. The tempo's everything. Chris Boucher, 150, 0.7 turnovers. He's doing that in 23 minutes per game, and that's kind of what you thought he would do this year with the potential to do a little bit more. Like, you go Chris Boucher, he's at 23 minutes right now. I kind of saw him as a 25-minute game per minute guy. Just looking and seeing, these guys they do have the potential for injury, and they don't really have other players on their roster. And Precious going out has helped this. But, I think we were ahead by quite a bit with Chris Boucher. I think a lot of people ran away last year. A lot of people didn't follow the team and kind of got caught up in some of the he can't play stuff. And he was, by the end of last year, getting six-man talk. It was only out of Toronto, but, the fact that they even went there. And it was mirrored by him learning the Nick Nurse way. So, Scotty Burns. Let's learn the Nick Nurse way. Let's get on point. I got you on one roster, and I need you to do good. Obviously, a lot of people got caught up in the hype, and the ADP might not be there, but it's only a third of the way through the season. So, if he could just stay on the court and keep his head down and get those numbers going, there's definitely enough talent for him to be a top 50 guy. If he can string together 2/3 of a season at top 50, well, he might not meet ADP, but again, a lot of players could go down around him as well. Two more teams to go. Utah. So Utah shouts, to Lauri Markkanen.